And welcome to Absurdum, where two people talk about various things until it becomes absurd. My name is Alex Adams. Along beside me is my partner in crime, the latent genius, Dallas. Say hi, everybody.
I was wondering if you were going to say my last name, because you always have problems.
Kasaboski.
Yeah, there you go.
It only took 6 years.
Yeah, so welcome back, everyone. It has been a long time. I think the last video we made, way back in the shadows of 2016 sometime. But
we dated it.
Talk about that.
No one wants to talk. Yeah, all those deaths, all those celebrity deaths. But is
way to bring it down. I was just alluding to the.
Well, there was good. Well, the ozone layer's best it's ever been.
Hey, 2016 was a good year for me. I moved to France. I got my own place. I'm working my job. Things are fine. But I live in a very privileged, isolated bubble. So anyway, we are back. Finally.
We're back.
I'm going to try and harangue this gentleman here, Alex, into actually, doing a bit more of these. We have 6 subscribers.
We have 6 whole subscribers. Fun. That beats my other channel, which shall not be named.
So yeah, so Alex, why don't you tell everybody what we're going to talk about today? Okay,
so this came to me as sort of a brain blast the other day. I've been going into a new job, a new contract. I'm a teacher in Ontario, and I'm adjusting to this new career. I was formerly like a caterer. I did some work with sound design, and this pervasive theme, which has gone through my life and which I think really hits to the core of people, is the balance between stress and relaxation. I can't remember who said it, but the core, it might have been Krishnamurti, but the core of exertion is relaxation, and the core of relaxation is exertion. If we do not exert ourselves, we can't fully relax, at least in my opinion. And if we can't fully relax, we can't exert ourselves to our maximum. And I think this mechanism runs true to everybody who has, and I think, so Dallas, you work from home. I work in sort of an academic situation, but not necessarily a business context. But if you're in a business type job, there is a prevailing sense of this overarching stress. So this low level of stress that pervades our lives, and what do we do about that? If I'm feeling like crap at work, how do I deal with that? And I think we're just going to go back and forth and then get to how we can live a less, what a unique podcast idea, by the way. How do we live a less stress-free life, Dallas? What do you think about that?
Well, okay, first off, I'm going to say that I know a lot of people who would hate vacationing with you, because the idea of having to exert yourself in order to relax, there's a lot of people who are like, no, I just want to lie on a beach and forget that I have to live.
Oh, dude, I've heard some actual people say that to me. Like, I'm gonna go smoke a cigarette on a cigarette break and forget that I'm alive.
Yeah, oh man. But no, I think, obviously there's no answer. So if you're looking for one, you can just stop the video right now.
Oh, snap! Get out.
There's several.
Unsubscribe.
Well, there's several. Yeah. Unlike, uncomment, unsubscribe. But. No, it's obviously it's very important, and the thing is, it's like a lot of things in life. It's not taught. It's not taught in schools. It's not.
It isn't.
They do. There are probably like seminars and things like that to look back at it now, but it is a really important. It is a really important subject, and the way it works for me. So, I have this thing. You're right. When you're working at a business type job or any kind of job, really, there is at least a low level of background stress.
Yes.
You're working, even if you're working like the easiest job in retail or whatever, you still have to be fully dressed. You have to be well mannered. You have to, function.
Yeah.
So there's like at least a low level of that, and then you add, I actually have work responsibilities and whatnot.
Yeah.
And you don't want that carrying over to the rest of your life, because then I feel like your life is tarnished.
Yes.
And then it's the same with relaxation, where you don't want to let the negatives of either influence. And there are probably some people who take on a more I don't know how to describe it. Maybe I see them as two different worlds, work and play.
Yeah.
Even though I will play when I'm working and I will work when I play. That's something different, but I still see them as two separate spheres. And I personally believe for myself that you have to work at managing those so that they function, well on their own and in conjunction to the other. So a lot of vague stuff, but let's get into specifics. Just before we started this podcast, I was telling Alex about how I'm working on a report right now. It's due at the end of the month. The end of the month is always crazy with work, but it's even crazier because I'm doing something new and there were some problems. I'm actually having to work this weekend, which I've been fortunate enough to not have to work weekends most of the time, but I'm working overtime.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you do that and still have a life? And how do you enjoy what you're doing outside of work when you have work to do? So
that's a very, how do you enjoy your life when you have that to-do list? That's a very pertinent question.
And it's something I've had to learn. Like when I was in university, there was no option. There was work until it's done. And then if you have time, maybe go hang out, go have fun, go play. But, the academic environment, was actually really good for me. But as an engineer, I spent the last 2 years of my university career basically as a troll. I just lived in my room. I hobbled out to eat unsuspecting children under a bridge. No, and then I would wander back in and do my work until it was over, no matter what time it was. And I had to do that. There's probably a better way to have gone through things, but I've had to get through that experience before I could learn balance. So anyway, I've been talking a lot. So how do you deal with it? I mean, you have difficulties with work and scheduling and things like this. And I work from home. I don't have to drive to work. You do. How do you deal with all of that?
Well, I wanted to comment on that experience. Your experience as in academia is very common alongside a lot of other students, where they're cloistered. They're spending all these days. They're spending all their time studying. But then you have people who are working creatively that are also, I'm reminded of Stephen Pressfield, who wrote The War of Art, talking about how a child playing in a tree or like a musician composing a composition, they're both sort of like they're lost in the reverie. They don't feel lonely. They don't feel like time is running out. They're just sort of in that state of flow, in that sort of flow state. And, I'm wondering if some students are in that flow state, some are not. But to bring it to encapsulate it, I started reading this book by David Allen called Getting Things Done, and I haven't finished it. But in the first chapter, he mentioned this. He just said this sentence which really resonated with me, and he talked about how the core of getting things done, the core of having a to-do list, and the core of managing yourself, managing your resources, managing your time, the zenith of that is to have nothing on your mind. If I have nothing on my mind, then I'm free to do what I want. And I feel like the modern work situation, so you work from home, I work in a career where I have lots of homework. The edges of work are starting to fade in modern society, and I think they have faded completely. We no longer go into a factory where we're breaking bricks or creating, metal works or beams. We're not fashioning wheels for cars, and then the whistle blows and we go home. Our leisure time is now permeated with work obligations, which is compounded by technology, which can connect us, but is also connecting us to our work obligations with greater and greater, there's a greater sort of we're just sort of glued to our work. Let me just put it like that, where you're at home, in my head, I still have work to do. I still have things to do. Oh, my boss texted me. Oh, okay, well, I got to do this. I got to do that. And then this goes and goes and goes. And unless we set limits and guidelines, that pervasive low-level stress is going to infect our lives, and we'll be thinking about nothing but work. So,
I completely agree with you there. I think it might have been France. It's usually France. But recently, I say that and that's where I am. But recently, places, organizations, and even countries have started started trying to limit that on a kind of a policy regulation standpoint. So
Yeah.
I think in some businesses in France, if you get a work email or a phone call or a text outside of normal business hours,
Mm-hmm.
like I believe there's some kind of actual like limitation or punishment for that.
Yes.
But that's very rare. You're right though, with technology and with the way that, the combination of technology and globalization. I mean, if you're
Mm-hmm.
running a company in the States, you may have business partners in China. You may have business partners in Europe. And so you have to operate on a wider, you can't just assume, well, it's 5 o'clock, nobody else is working.
Yep.
So I completely agree. And I think it does come down to setting limitations, setting guidelines. So, like I said, I work from home. I am very fortunate. I can make my own schedule as long as I, attend the right phone calls and get the work done. I can work whatever kind of schedule I want. I can be up at 3 a.m. I can be up at 3 p.m. Doesn't matter. But I also have a life. I have friends.
Yep.
I have family who are
As we all do.
In a different, yeah, of course. But most of my friends and family are 6 hours away by time zone.
Yeah.
So that puts a bit of a twist into it. And then because I live at home, it's a great thing, but because I live at home, I also have, not exactly pressure, but, I live with my girlfriend. So there's that element of distraction. I'm using quotes here because she's going to listen to it later and be like, what? I'm not a distraction. I'm the greatest good. Yeah.
Where is my super suit?
Yeah, where is? Yeah. So, but there's a lot of elements of that. And there have been times where it's like, okay, look, I know I said I'd be done by 5 o'clock, but I'm going to work until 6 o'clock. Why? Because I can get all of this stuff done and then I can close it. I can put it away. I'm not going to check emails for the rest of the night. So thankfully, everyone I know has been really supportive of that. And that's my beginning philosophy here is,
Yeah.
I specifically set time for work and I specifically set time for play, and the two do not meet. And if they meet, there's a reason for it. It's like, I've been working 38 hours straight and I need to go watch a TV show or I'll explode. Fine.
Yeah.
Or, well, I thought I was done, but a colleague needs me to touch up his presentation. That's annoying. I'll do it. And then we'll have the rest of our evening or whatever. And that is really important. I think if I didn't do that, I would either never stop working or I would never reach my full potential at work because I wouldn't have that structure. But it's tough. Yeah, it's tough when because you don't have that external, that setup, like you said, and even the external pressure is now working against you. Yeah, you have to keep your phone on and getting emails from your boss. And your country isn't lucky enough to say, hey, don't text me outside of business hours.
Yep.
You have to be adamant about that with your work, with your boss, with your colleagues. They have to understand that. And some jobs don't. This is rumor and hearsay, but the engineers at SpaceX are worked around the clock. And if you can't handle it, you are fired because everyone wants to work at SpaceX.
Yep.
So they accomplish great things. And this is not against SpaceX. It's just a good example. You have to set boundaries for yourself, and you have to set boundaries with the people you're with.
Yeah.
I tell my girlfriend, I'm going to be busy. I'm sorry. That's it. And that's fine. We literally work around it. We just have to make it function.
So those are some incredible points that you brought up, Dallas, that it's not enough to work under the guidelines that's set by your place of work in order to reduce your stress. You have, as an individual, you have to self-advocate and set limits to say, and bring those up. And I understand that, this is a scary thing because we're talking about our livelihoods here. Talking with your boss about not being able to go to a specific meeting or not being able to pick up your phone after a certain hour is a scary thing. But but it needs to be done. It's a necessary medicine because the alternative is worse. The alternative is sort of bending over backwards, which in the long run doesn't help anybody because that causes burnout that's a human resources issue. That causes burnout on the individual level, which degrades the business that you're working in. So if you want to take it from that perspective and you want to be a truly good, element of the business you're working with, you need to be a healthy, productive individual. And that means setting external guidelines. Additionally,
Oh, sorry. I was just going to interrupt you there and say that is exactly the kind of reasoning I had to apply to myself in late university to allow myself to relax. And it was like, you can't be a good little engineering student if you die from working too hard.
Yeah. And sometimes
I had to fine, I will have fun for this hour as part of my routine. I had to do that because I was too stressed about the responsibility to allow myself to have fun without having a corporate reason for it.
Anyway, and it's whatever works. Like I would label you as a type A kind of personality. You're very driven. I think I'm kind of in that too. Like I like to be very organized, and I do hold myself to high standards, as I think we all do. The listeners here, in some capacity, you guys all hold yourself to really high standards. We want to achieve, we want to be these great people, but that requires downtime. And what's more, so there's this French philosopher named Montaigne, and there's this quote that he has that really always resonated with me, that everyone can be sort of like, an organized individual in public, but in private, in our leisure time, when everything is hidden and when everything is permitted, that's where it really counts. And what I mean by that is let's say, because we're talking about stress and reducing stress. So let's say we've set external motivators, you've talked with your boss, and you've set up systems in place where the work is done. Because that's what we were talking about is the edge of work is starting to blur with our modern lives. We no longer have an edge to where the office closes and the home begins. So we've set external situations where maybe you've turned off your cell phone after a certain time. Maybe you've planned in advance with your friends or family like a fun night or something, or maybe just time for you. I think that's even the most important part. Glass of wine, turn on some Netflix. But what's the most important part of this, in my opinion, is the internal limitations. Because it doesn't matter where you are, if you're in a movie theater or if you're out with your girlfriend or your boyfriend and you're watching a movie or playing video games or whatever, or if you're polyamory, I don't mind. But Dallas just kind of made a face. But if you're living and work internally, all of that is dust in the wind. It's all mist.
It's useless.
It's useless. Because you're
that's exactly it. And I've been at it long enough, like just working and studying and researching, and that I know myself and I know how that works. So there are times where I will do a little bit, like I will schedule an hour more of work where I probably don't do an hour's worth, but I'm using that to be like, all of my work ends here. Mm-hmm. Now, emails are caught up and organized and the files are put where they need to be and blah, blah, blah. Because that's what I do is I try to clear in my recreational time, I try to clear my mind of work. It's not, I have to get this done, I have this email to do. No, none of that. And sometimes that's a bit extreme because sometimes it's like, you get an unexpected email and you try to ignore it, but you can't. Yep. Or you can ignore it, but you shouldn't. And it's like, okay, look, I need this 5 minutes to compose this email and whatever. And sometimes it's annoying. I got an email the other night. We were watching a movie. It was late. But I had to answer it. I had to answer back. And it was like, okay, look, we're going to pause this movie. We're going to answer this thing. And then we're going to go back to it. And I mean, it wasn't an ideal situation, but it allowed me to be, as the army might say, allowed me to be the best me that I could be at the time.
Yeah.
So I could focus on work, get it done, and then go back and it's like work-free Dallas. And
yep.
that's what I do and that's what I have to do. And yeah, it is tough, but it is necessary. And I mean, I was just thinking as you were speaking, if you're a very, I don't want to say rational, but if you're like a very utilitarian person and you're like,
Yes.
oh, I can't, whatever, you can almost do like a 2-step program
Uh
of getting
huh.
yourself into a relaxed mode.
Tell me
And
about it.
the two steps would be this. First, make your leisure time productive.
Mm.
That's the first step. Because if you have trouble relaxing because you're like, oh, I should be getting stuff done, I should be productive. Okay, make your leisure time productive. Create things. I write, I make podcasts, and
Yep.
I do like video podcast stuff, and I get that done, and it's like I'm still relaxed,
I
like I'm
got.
still,
Oh yeah.
but I'm working.
I gotta
And then
step
what you
in.
can,
I gotta
okay, go
step in
ahead.
because Picasso said work relaxes me, and he would create in order to work. And the idea of leisure is not inactivity. Tim Ferriss said that too. It's not about working less. It's about doing the stuff you want to do. So work in itself can be relaxing. But please go ahead.
Well, so that's the first step is, let's say you want to do the relaxing part, the actual lying there and not doing anything because you're just tired, but you can't get there because you're a good model worker and you just can't get
Yeah.
yourself to like stop working. Well, first step is do something productive in your leisure time. You still feel productive. You have a lot of the same energy and motivation and you're making something cool, probably. And yet it's a different kind of situation. So it's maybe not as stressful in the same way as work. And then the second step, this is the hard one, is now you're podcasting, you're writing, and you're GoProing on a mountain in your spare time. But how do you get to the literal Netflix and chill, the Netflix and sit down, the Netflix
And
and
no
don't
one
do
gives you
anything,
that look.
exactly, the Netflix and your mind is turned off? Maybe what you can do is you can remind yourself that sometimes creativity comes out of nowhere. So maybe if you
Yes.
just tell yourself, well, I have to take an hour to just like stare at nature so that my brain can allow me to write that sonnet I've been working on. Okay, that might help. Sometimes
Yep.
it's not exactly lying to yourself, it's about convincing yourself. And the pressure that if you it's funny, the same thing that makes you a good worker also can make you a bad worker, which is
100% agree.
you put that stress on yourself to get work done, which allows you to be motivated to succeed, which is what your boss loves, but then it makes it so you can't work or you can't relax. So you're always on.
Yeah.
You
That's
have
the
to
crucial
learn,
to turn
you have to
off.
learn how to, yeah, learn to treat yourself, as they say in Parks and Rec, learn to relax, learn
Yes.
to allow yourself to do stuff like that. And it is, yeah, I said it a million times. It's not easy.
There is a way, and so for the individual that maybe you might be somebody like Dallas or myself, where turning off is difficult for you, and you have that, which is really like a crushing. It's sort of like a no man's land because what I think that you were describing is that you can't turn it off, so your productivity is actually going down as an individual. You can't act creatively. The obligations are sort of like coming out of nowhere, out of your subconscious. Oh, what about this? Oh, what about that? And so you're in this state where you're not fully present anywhere at work or at home, because at work you wish you weren't feeling like this, feeling like in this state, and at home you wish you were being more productive. And the idea of creativity, where you do it is and if you need convincing, ladies and gentlemen, let the mechanism convince you. I'm sure every one of you have had situations where you felt inspired, where you've been in a state where an idea has sort of come out of nowhere.
Life doesn't inspire me.
Just so totally uninspired.
Constant state of ennui. Anyway,
Just
sorry.
oh god, that word, I love it. Where you've been working on a problem, and nothing happens, and then just bam, out of nowhere. Einstein would take walks on the beach, and he would get the mathematical equations, the physics equations he described as coming out of his bones. I think it might not penicillin. There was this individual who had and please do some light googling, ladies and gentlemen, where the molecular formula for some sort of drug came to him with a dream, and it was like this series of interconnecting snakes. We work as human beings. Our brains are the parasympathetic nervous system, which controls falling asleep, or sexual function. We can't force ourselves, no matter how much we try and how good worker bees we are. You can't will yourself to sleep. You can't productiveness yourself to sleep. You can't organize your priorities or your time or make a vision statement to get yourself to fall asleep faster. It is 100%. It is an allowing. It is not an efforting. And that's what creative work is. It is an allowing. And how one does that is you have to get your mind out of the workspace and into a state of nothing on your mind and you have to give your subconscious room to breathe. This is not like a woo-woo thing. This is how some of the top executives, creatives, for instance, Richard Branson, who's the owner of Virgin Airlines. Someone gave him like, what's your number one thing, number one productive way to get more time in the day? Your number one way to be productive. And he sort of leaned back in his chair, a pensive stare into the ceiling. He took a few breaths and he said, workout. That had nothing to do with his being a Virgin Airlines CEO or anything like that. Getting your mind into a different headspace, allowing your brain to breathe, and then having the creativity do itself, like falling asleep. And I think that's another factor of being able to get out of that workspace. But then, we've got the mechanism, but how do we do that? How do we do that?
Well,
that's a rhetorical question. You can say whatever you want.
Like, comment, subscribe with the answer. So I was just thinking about how, okay, so if you are a fan or know of Star Trek at all, you know that our neighboring alien species in that show, genre, franchise are the Vulcans,
Ferengi.
And they're super.
Sorry.
Yeah, Ferengi. Yeah. The Vulcans. They're super logical. They're all of their life is rationale and logic, and they must view human beings. Forget the fact that we have emotions that we express and that we have emotional outbursts and that sometimes we're irrational just because, God damn it. But
hijacked by our emotions.
Even just thinking about a work day, because a Vulcan could probably say, I must work for these 8 hours and be on an upward slope of productivity. And they might be able to do it. But unfortunately, human beings are not. And I mean, trust me, listeners out there, the stubborn men and women who are like, whatever, I can do it. You probably can't. You're probably really good at it, but you probably can't work 8 hours straight with an upward slope of productivity. Yeah. And I personally know because I tried to do that and I get pretty close, but it does start to tear away at the walls of hygiene, mental health, nutrition and nourishment. Yeah. I mean, I can do it, but I'm not me at the end. I'm hyperactive troll goblin me. Yeah. So it's annoying because sometimes you're like, even if you're creating, it's like, I must work for this next hour and I want to get this done. And if you're creating, it's even worse because it's not like I have to put the number in the file.
You can't force it.
I have to paint or I have to write. Yeah. So you say, I set this time for myself. And then an hour later, you haven't done it because you're a human being and you're flawed and you work whenever the hell the muses decide to let you work.
Yeah.
And then when you look at external pressures, again, I mean, I can set my own schedule, but most jobs you cannot. Most jobs you have a very specific schedule and you must be on for that time. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with having a society that expects you to work and sometimes you can't? Maybe you go somewhere and the company is like, we work Saturdays. That's what we do. If you're in retail, you work weekends all the time, but a lot of people in the business world generally have evenings and weekends off.
Yeah.
How do you, what would you think, Alex? How would you deal with that if, you have a regular 9 to 3 or 8 to 2, whatever the school system is now?
Yep. So this has been my strategy, and I learned this from a couple of different people. I learned this, and I'm constantly all over Tim Ferriss because he's one of my heroes. Also, there's this individual, he's a Navy SEAL, his name's Jocko Willink, and he was on Tim Ferriss's podcast. He also wrote this book called Extreme Ownership, and both of them have this sort of, and a few other people have talked about this too, but one has to have a space inside. They have to cultivate the ability, and I'll try to lay this out as plainly as possible, of how quickly can you turn it on and can you turn it off? And it has this skill set of turning off your brain and getting into your body and sort of sensing your body or whatever, breathing slow and getting from 60 to 0. And one has to transform one's workspace into an environment. And one's life. One has to be able to transform their life into where it's interspersed with pockets of supreme relaxation. And I'm talking minutes. Like, so for instance, let's give like a real example here. I have a stressful morning. There's a lot of escalations in my class, a lot of paperwork, let's say, and I've got, let's say 5 or 10 minutes. I had to work halfway through my break. I got a 20-minute break. I've only got about 5 or 6 minutes. So what am I going to do? Am I going to sit on a chair and I'm going to, browse my phone for a bit? Am I going to maybe walk around the school? Maybe I could, there's a couch in the staff room. I can lie on the couch, close my eyes, even if there's people in that room talking, and I can maybe just let go of what my ego thinks I'm expected to look like at that environment, for the ultimate reason of becoming a more productive, happy person. And I can truly, truly relax. And being able to find spaces in your place of work, and I understand it's very, very difficult for people in the business world to do this kind of thing, but I'll cite an example in Japan. A lot of the businesses have mandated meditation periods in Japan. In a lot of businesses in South America, they've got areas where you're taking naps. In Europe too, a lot of places, taking breaks, naps in the middle of the day. But and I brought up Jocko Willink because Jocko Willink would take what's called like the micro nap. And he became very, very good at this. The guy would actually lose consciousness. He would fall asleep for 7 minutes. He would lie back on his desk. He would put his feet above his heart and breathe very slowly. And he would be able to do a micro nap and sleep for very, very short periods of time. So that would be my first toolkit for the listeners here, is find places in the day, because it'll do you no good to have hours and hours of the day. But if you're stressed out, if you're thinking about work and you're not doing it, you're not going to fully relax. But just in the middle of it, in the middle of the maelstrom, finding a point where you could just lean back in your chair. And the crux here is not caring what the image that you're appearing of this lazy, because I think you would agree with Dallas if I say that, like, the idea of relaxation in the corporate world, in the business world, is associated with laziness. When you see somebody fully relaxing in the space of work, a lot of people have that association with, I'm not doing my job, I'm being lazy, other people are working, I'm relaxing, what's wrong with me? But you have to just get over yourself, because the ultimate goal is being a more productive person and finding that space. So what do? You're working, you can feel your eyes twitching, your heart is racing, you've got cramps, you've got neck pain because you're crunched over a computer. Take a walk around. Take 5 minutes. Go to the bathroom. Maybe not in the bathroom, but find a quiet space. Maybe just lie on the floor for a few minutes. Don't get over yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, and find that space to or maybe just lean back in your chair, put your feet up, and just breathe for just 90 seconds and get that relaxation space. So that's my first tool for that.
You start out strong if that's your first tool. It's I mean. Yeah, no, I think you're right. We jump around this concept a lot on this channel, and I think I forget how it's translated into Latin, but know yourself, and being able to migrate into that inner core part of you. If you're jumping through this podcast and you jump to this moment, you're wondering, like, how did we get into this kind of hippie new wave kind of self-love philosophy? But the fact is, if you are able to enter into that part of yourself, which is just you, it's not even your close relationships or your work or anything, it's just you can shut off the rest of the world a lot easier, with confidence that you're doing the right thing, you're working. Relaxing for a moment to increase your productivity later is technically the best thing that you can do in a situation. If, as we've said over and over, you just keep working, your productivity goes down, you get tired. And yeah, you have to escape. And that's a thing I hadn't thought of, was the pressure of appearing, the pressure of the image of you relaxing at work or at a corporate space, yeah, it could appear bad. I mean, since I work at home, I don't have that. I mean, there might be a time or two where my girlfriend comes in and I'm watching a YouTube video, even though I was supposed to be working. But it's like, yeah, but I've been working for the past hour. I need that. So you need to, know yourself and know what you can do so that even if somebody calls you on your crap, you can be like, hey man, it's 7 p.m. I'm done work. Or hey, it's 5 minutes. Here's your files or whatever that you want.
And I feel like that it'll speak for itself, in the long run, because I feel like it's the people who hold fast to that ego-driven image of being a productive worker bee. Those are the people that burn out. And those are the people that take stress leaves, and they're the ones that are out for 6, 12 months, 4 or 6 months, not being able to pick up a phone. And we need to be able to enjoy our lives without inner considering. We have to be able to enjoy our lives like that, and to just have nothing but and just in summary, to not be sort of like torturing ourselves with the image that we must be this perfect individual, and understanding that we all have like an inner funkiness. We all have, like, for instance, I love mood lighting, and I don't have the luxury of doing, I'm not at like a position in the hierarchy where I can choose the own lighting in my office. But at home, I have a lot of Chinese lanterns everywhere and Christmas lights. Because I understand that I'm not, and maybe some other person would be like, oh, well, look at this guy. He's just like putting some fancy lights up. Maybe like a critical person might say that. But I understand that that's the way my own inner funkiness works. And like I have specific kinds of music that I like to listen to, sometimes over and over and over again. So finding that way, and this is within the subheading of being relaxed at work. We got to find tools that will allow us to get into that state quickly and reliably is crucial, and not just sort of like this is science. This is an experiment. Find out what works for you, what gets you into that state of just being relaxed and alert, which is like, you could call it meditation, but you call it whatever you want.
Yeah, and I think the structure, as we said, is important. If you understand yourself and your environment and you develop over time a structure, what's great about that is that the structure can hold itself up. That's the definition of it.
100% agree. 100% agree.
So if you for example, and this is the other side of it, how to actually work. I need a desk to work. Some people sit on their bed with the computer, they sit on the floor, or whatever. No, I can't. I don't like that. I sit in a chair at a desk.
Yeah.
Whatever kind of desk, I don't care. And that's how I work. And I have to have that space. If I don't, then I'm wasting time and energy setting up that space, or I procrastinate doing that because my space isn't set up.
Yep.
So it's the same thing. It's the same thing with relaxing. You set a time, you get into a schedule, you take, regular breaks, you
maybe even a ritual associated with relaxing. You eat a certain food.
And if you have that routine, then the routine can help you when you most need it.
Yeah.
When you're sitting there freaking out, you're like, no, I don't have time. And it's not perfect. I mean, for me, unfortunately, there's one aspect of my day-to-day life that I let slip when I get most busy, which is very counterproductive, which is exercising.
Glad you mentioned that.
I was sick for the first couple of weeks of this year, so I dropped out of my exercise routine, which I don't have to defend it to you listeners, but I will, because I couldn't do it.
Rationalization. Love it.
I literally could not do it. And then after that, I'm better, but I got busy, and now I haven't done it this week. And it's like, the rationale is I'm busy and I don't have time. But it is something I should try to do, because it's really, it's a half-hour run or it's a 20-minute exercise.
Yep.
It's not a lot of time in the grand scheme of things.
Yep.
But for me, it's a work in progress. Just trying to let the listeners know we're not preaching here. We are slogging through the same mires of life as you are.
We are frontliners, ladies and gentlemen. We are not these CEO, self-made, billionaire podcasters. We're dudes. We're earning. We're trying to get a buck. We're trying to get a meal, and we're just sharing the tools that we know. And speaking of tools in relationship with exercise, you know, I love exercise a lot, but I also don't do it as much as I should. La-di-da. This is the clarion call of all of humanity. Everyone should, but should is a problem because if we say should too much, we should all over ourselves. That's Tony Robbins. That's not me. But here's a very, very short laundry list, and yeah, right, really, really short. And you could do this. Like most of these are tools for home, not necessarily tools for the office, but things that you might want to invest in. One is you could get a kettlebell. Now a kettlebell is basically like a bowling ball with a little loop on it, and you can get them at various poundages. And what you want to do is get one of those, and you could Google kettlebell swings. A kettlebell swings are very, very simple, biokinetically safe. You're not really going to injure yourself too much if the weight is low enough. Little exercise you can do. It's a full body exercise, and that's going to get your heart rate up. It's going to work your whole body, your whole posterior chain, your legs. You only need like a bathroom's worth of space to do a kettlebell swing. And I'm not going to belabor the point that exercise is crucial to stress relief. It's probably the number one. If you any kind of PubMed medical article website you want to talk about, it's the number one stress reduction thing you can do. It gives you more time. It's basically free mood altering drugs. Everybody should be exercising every day.
I don't know. I mean, all the gym memberships, and I gotta drive to the gym, and I gotta lift the thing, and then
but what about that?
I gotta set time for it.
But what about this? You can. So that's an issue of chunking. But we might talk about that later.
I don't know if I want to talk about that.
You want to talk about chunking?
I don't know.
You just gotta move every day. If you want a less stressful life, you could get a kettlebell swing, do a kettlebell. You could do some push-ups. There's a million. Christopher Sommer is this gymnast strength coach. Check out his website. Kelly Starrett has got this YouTube channel called Mobility WOD, Mobility Workout of the Day. Stretching and exercise is crucial. So if we're talking about stress relief, we talked about setting limits. You got to set external limits with your boss and your colleagues, and your family members set internal limits too. We talked about quickly relaxing. You got to relax very, very quickly, or no, you don't have to, but training yourself to get into a state. You got to relax. You got to allow yourself and get into a state where you can reliably get into a state of relaxation, and also you got to move, people. You got to exercise. Get a medicine ball. Get a tennis ball or a golf ball and roll your foot on the tennis or the golf ball. That really helps with the metatarsal tendons. Mashes your.
You're reminding me of Die Hard, where the guy's like, "Take off your shoes and make little balls with your toes." I'm not doing that in the office, Alex. The last guy who did that got held up at Nakatomi Plaza and ran around through glass with no shoes on. So, thank you. I will relax in my own way. Yeah.
You know what I've been watching, this total sidebar, but the YouTube video of Time Cop where Jean-Claude Van Damme kicks that guy into his former self and he turns into a bunch of like gross time putty. I don't know why, but that's the grossest shit.
That's a good way to help you relax. Roundhouse kick your former time self and turn into a relaxing mold of time putty.
Oh, God.
And I think with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end. Welcome to 2017.
Welcome to the new year.
Yeah, we hope to make more of these in the future. So thanks for listening.
And have a wonderful afternoon. Stay stress-free. But if you don't stay stress-free, realize that even a violin string needs to be under a little bit of stress to play a good tune. So don't forget that we need a little bit of stress in our lives. We'll see you next time on Absurdum.